The time shift.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Time Shift. This week we're reviewing the latest episode of Doctor Who titled The Interstellar Song Contest. And we kick off this review as we do with these reviews by talking about the story, the writing and tangentially related matters. Just two things very quickly. First of all, I've got my little desktop fan on, so if you hear any weird noises in the background, that's it. I've also got the window open because it's very warm, so if you hear the dogs outside, it's Interstellar Space Dogs! Woo! And such like. Right. So, this is an episode where a lot of people are going to want to talk about two major plot points, two major revelations. We won't do that just yet, because I want to talk about those things. You want to talk about those things if you're watching this video, but, we'll get onto that shortly. Now, I just want to say that this is an episode which I was kind of nervous going into it, because I'm going to be honest with you, and this isn't something that's really come up on the channel, at least not to my memory, is that I am a massive fan of the Eurovision Song Contest. Like, massively so. Almost problematically so in some regards. So the idea of having an episode of Doctor Who which was effectively Doctor Who meets Eurovision was something I was very nervous about, because if they bollock this up, oh boy, I would be in a terrible mood. And I'll just say is that for the hero now is that whilst I don't think this will be ultimately one of my favourite episodes of this series, or this season, or of the Russell T Davies 2 era, I did bloody love it from a purely subjective point of view. This is an episode which, well, it is that Sylvester McCoy era introduced darkness to the character, something that was introduced towards the start of the McCoy era, which is somewhat coincidental given what happens towards the end of this particular episode, but hey, we'll discuss that shortly. But it is that darkness that was introduced in that era. Yes, some people could argue that it was kind of also introduced in the Sixth Doctor's era and as well with the William Hartnell era, but still, beyond the point, you get the idea. This is an element of the Doctor's character which, whilst I think that he always runs the risk of being overdone, I certainly feel that given what's happened in the Doctor's backstory over the past 20 years, there's at least more of a justification for us doing it here and now than necessarily even back during the Sylvester McCoy era. And it's an element of the character that I do enjoy seeing now and again. It's one that I don't really feel has been properly done in the Russell T Davies Mark II era, and I definitely feel was absent during the Chris Chibnall era, which is a shame because I think that if they played into those moments of angst and anger within Jodie Whittaker's character when she was performing as the Doctor, that really would have taken that performance to the next level and helped to round it off. But sadly, that's something that we didn't get, but hey ho, you can't get the eggs out of an omelette. Even beyond the fact that this is Doctor Who meets Eurovision in space, this is still an episode that I just really did love, because I think this is an episode that really does have a sense of adventure behind it, which I think has been largely missing from Doctor Who from a while now. I'm not one of these people that thinks that Doctor Who has totally lost its sense of adventure. I'm certainly not that case of it, as I do think that there's still that element present within most of it. But even still, even if we go just from the previous few episodes, they didn't quite have this level of madcap adventure to them. And I think that's something that is aided off by the fact we have such a very distinct and memorable environment, at least for the sake of the episode. It has a sense of place and it has a sense of grounding to it, which make it feel as though this is a real lived-in place. Yes, at the end of the day, this is still Eurovision in space, and it owes a lot to having such a strong and identifiable source material to draw from. And even if you don't know about it, it's obvious that they are playing into that with some of the set dressing, particularly when you get to environments such as in the museum section and with the cameo appearances with Graham Norton and of course Ryan Clark Neal, who has now become this immortal Eurovision avatar thing, which, hey ho, I'm happy for him. He gets to do his dream job for all eternity. But anyway, in any case, it does end up making the episode feel as though it has that level of weight, which I think is just been missing from the science fiction focus episodes of the show. This feels, again, like a real location. It feels grounded as a space station that's almost entirely centered around Eurovision can be. It's something that has a sense of place to which feels classic of Doctor Who in a way. It feels as though it's a lived-in practical environment, even if, again, it is just a music venue. It really does feel as though we're going to somewhere new, somewhere different, yet familiar at the same time. Yes, certain degrees of this is taken from the fact it has a real-world source material which you draw off of, but at the same time, it does have a feel of it which does feel alien, new and fresh in a way which is fun to explore and fun to see. I am happy as to how it will all balance out as far as the Eurovision stuff is concerned, as it didn't overpower the episode and vice versa. As at the end of the day, this is an episode which does definitely feels as though it has a very specific subtext that he wants to get across here. Subtext I'm sure will rub certain people the wrong way, and subtext which I'm going to be honest, I'm not brave enough to tackle on a channel like this, but I do feel as though it was done in a way which was tasteful. I think that certain elements of the performance did hold it back, however that's something we'll discuss later on. This is a story which, in the lead up to it, there was speculation that, oh, this is going to be the episode that's going to reintroduce the gods of Ragnarok, another Sylvester McCoy era reference, and in the end of the day, it wasn't. And I am thankful that at the end of the day here, the villain was just a guy out for revenge for his people and the horrific things that have been done to them, I should say, as well as all the bigotry and stuff that he's surrounded and pressed onto them. And that is something that I do appreciate. I appreciate the fact that at the end of the day, we have a very understandable character. There is no, this is the Dark Lord of the Gingbigi from the planet Shmoo, and they're out to do the 12th prophecy of Myrrh. I'm glad that we didn't get into that territory. And this is just a very basic, I just realised that here's another thing you could add into the mix. It's Doctor Who meets Eurovision meets Die Hard from a certain point of view. So, hey, we just got more combination of things going into it. Like I say, I think that the whole idea of just this revenge plot, this mass murder exercise as a act of vengeance for what happened to kids' people, I think just... I appreciate that in a era of Doctor Who which is mostly about gods and cosmic level threats, that at the end of the day we have something that's a lot more straightforward, that is a lot more understandable, so that you can put your hand on and say, I know what they're saying here, even though I'm not brave enough to say it myself. The whole plot reveal that at the end of the day he's doing this because his planet has been torn apart so that a corporation can harvest the poppies to make honey and then destroy that planet so that they can never grow that honey again, as well as repress their culture and all that stuff. I think it is horrifying and terrible and terrifying, but it does make for a fascinating entry point and origin for a character like this. And without getting into a fourth crossover point, the idea of a character acting the way that society expects them to, a way that society has almost cultivated them to, is something that does echo to what we end up seeing and we talk about repeatedly with the My Hero Academia series I do review as in a different series. This is an episode, like I say, that does get into a lot more of the adventurous side of Doctor Who. As soon as I saw the confetti cannons early on in the episode, I thought, okay, this is a thing that's going to come into play. How are they going to do it? And, oh, the Doctor uses it to propel themselves through space. It's silly, it's goofy, and I'm certain that some people make out that's a bigger problem than it is, but for a fly-slapping adventurous episode of Doctor Who, I am perfectly fine with that. And the whole thing of why they can't communicate and send a distress signal out because, oh, we want to avoid people gambling, we want to avoid people trying to make money off this inappropriately, that's fine. I think that of justifications as to why there isn't all of this happening, why there isn't suddenly a fleet of starships trying to shut all this down, it's something I'm perfectly fine with. They work really well to make all of this feel logical. There's nothing about this that feels too much of a stretch of the imagination. Everything feels sufficiently grounded, everything feels sufficiently solid and tangible that I really have to praise the writing behind this. Because whilst this is an episode of Doctor Who, whilst it is science fiction adventure, whilst it's science fiction fantasy, I do appreciate it when we have sci-fi episodes where it feels as though there's a definitive through line of logic here. There is definitely something behind all of this, beyond just the subtext, but even just a mechanical point of view. I know that some people might be disappointed that we didn't get the gods of Ragnarok making their bigger reappearance within the series, but I do appreciate the fact that we ended up getting a very straightforward, honest-to-God science fiction episode of Doctor Who. That this wasn't something that was coupled in with some space monster that's from a different timeline universe bullshit thing, and this wasn't some evil god that was manipulating the universe. That this was just a genuine, actual sci-fi adventure episode, and I am over the moon with that. Look, I'm not going to say it, but at least for this episode, it did feel as though Doctor Who was genuinely back for me. I'm not one of those people that thinks that Doctor Who's gone away, but this gave me that thrill and excitement that I have not felt with Doctor Who in quite a while, and I really do appreciate that. With all that said and done, I think it's time for us to discuss the two major plot elements of this episode. First of all, at a long last, after how many decades at this point, we're finally starting to get a conclusion, a follow-up in the main series to Susan. Susan Foreman, the Doctor's granddaughter, is here! She's here! The Doctor sees her! The Doctor sees her in these vision things that he ends up having when he's in space, and now and again, and that leads us to that great moment, which is, Grandfather, no, don't do it, while he's zapping the crap out of Kid. This is something that I've been looking forward to for a very long time. I'm excited to see where they go with it. There has been some speculation, of course, that Susan may come into this at some point, but let's be honest, ever since the Peter Capaldi era, there's been speculation that Susan will come back into this in some way, shape or form, and pretty much every companion and mysterious character that's been introduced into the series from this point on has been, ooh, could it be Susan who's actually this person? And every single bloody time it turns out it isn't, but now we have! There is speculation that Belinda might be Susan or connected to Susan in some way, or that maybe if we get to a season 3 of the Russell T Davies Mark II era, that Susan will be the key driving point behind it in some way, shape or form, but that is something that we'll discuss when we get to it. Look, I'm not going to rag on it, but there's something, I like the moment, I like the idea of Susan just appearing, but I feel as though there need to be something more behind it. There need to be more of an impact moment. Even just a musical sting of just, BAM! Here she is, just to underline it. Because otherwise it just kind of happens in a way which feels a little bit confusing. Like there was a split second where Caroline Ford, I think her name is, apologies if I got the name wrong, appears on screen. I thought that for a moment it was the character that Russell T Davies implied was the Doctor's mother back in the day, until I realised, oh crap, it's actually Susan, holy crap. So we'll see where that goes, but even with that said, I think that moment just needed more of a something behind it. And I will just say this purely from a cinematography point of view, I don't think that having her in the TARDIS was the right idea, because she's wearing mostly white in a very matte white lighting effect, so she just kind of gets lost in it. I think she needed more of a darker background to her. Even if it's still the TARDIS, switch a few of the lights off. Put the red emergency lights on, and then that at the very least will, you know, underline the fact that holy crap, it's Susan. Now, of course, the other major revelation in this episode is that Mrs. Flood was in fact not Susan, but it was the Rani all along. Another character, another Sylvester McCoy era reference, a character that people have been speculating might come back into play since the hand that took the Master's ring from when he died in the Russell T Davies Mark I era at the end of that episode that I forget the episode. Well, he didn't die at the end of the episode. He was cremated, and then they took the ring, and then he became a skeleton man.
Yeah, Doctor, I'm here to defeat you boob!
I know that it was a reference to that time where he was kind of a skeleton man, but God, that effect didn't age well. It didn't even age well at the time, but anyway, the Rani is back. Turns out that Mrs. Flood was the Rani after all, and now they're bi-generated. Oh dear, can we not do the bi-generation thing, please? Can we really not do the bi-generation thing, please? Like, it's one thing, like, I like the Rani as a character, but I liked her when she was first introduced, when she was more of this neutral entity. She was just a very morally grey scientist. She didn't, I think even in the episode, the story that she's introduced in, she says that she doesn't really care about good and evil. She thinks the battle of good and evil is a pointless endeavour, and she's just more about getting the end results and getting a result, even if it requires the deaths of God knows how many innocent life forms in order to get it. I mean, yes, she's still a villain, but she's not villainous. Just happens that when she got her second major appearance in the debut of Sylvester McCoy's, that when they wrote it as to be more of just an overt villain, which that's pretty much where they're going now, and it feels as though they're just going to make her into a female version of the Master, even though we've had a female version of the Master. Which, bloody hell, Stephen Moffat, what have you done to us? Anyway, I do like the reveal of it, and I do appreciate the fact that with this episode we didn't get the next time on Doctor Who bit, and in place of that is when we got the reveal that Mrs. Flood was in fact the Rani. The fact that the Mrs. Flood version of the Rani is so quiet and submissive, I don't get, but at the same time I think the Rani understands that the Rani will kill the Rani if the Rani screws around, or that possibly the Rani knows something about bi-generation that the Doctor does not know, so they don't want to do anything that could end up getting themselves permanently killed. I don't know, but I'm sure that's something we'll discuss shortly. I think that their appearance is neat. I think it is cool. I just want to see more of that character. I think that I'm the Rani, the definitive article, was a bit of a crunchy line, all things considered, but at the end of the day, this is modern Doctor Who. It's going to keep referencing itself until it gets cancelled. So we'll just make do with what we have with that. Still, I'm interested to see exactly where they end up going with all of this and how the hell Rani plays into this big final 2-episode thing at the end of all of this. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Now let's talk about the performances and say that this is one of those episodes where I don't want to just say everyone did good, because everyone did do good, but I don't think this is an episode which has a standout good performance. It is good to end up having an episode where Kutagatwa gets to play the darker, more angsty and more angry side of the Doctor, even though I do think as though, even whilst I do praise the episode for at least going down that path, I still think that more could have been done to just build that out even more and to take it to that next level. I think that may be due to a scripting thing, it may be just due to a pacing thing. I think that what we could have at the very least had was a moment where both Belinda and Susan are shouting at the Doctor to stop him from doing that, to stop him from hurting Kid. That I think would have really just added a nice little moment, a nice little pinch of salt to that particular moment to take it to the next level. And that maybe the two of them shouldn't have been quite as chummy at the end of it, but we'll see where all that goes. I don't want to go into the path of saying bad performances, but I do feel as though the actor playing the... what was her name? Oh, blimey, I can't remember the character's name, and look at the credits isn't helping me. You know, the character that's wore the gold dress and ultimately was revealed to be member of the Hellion race. They're a great singer, but I feel that there were just moments of their performance which didn't quite land for me. The big thing of, all Hellions aren't what you say they are. I think, well, actually, to be fair, that's more of a writing thing than an acting thing. There's no one that could have played in a line like that well, but, you know, just certain reaction shots I don't think really worked well. I think that's less on their fault, because I think they are good in the role itself. I just think maybe there's something that was lost in the writing and the directing with all that one. I'm going to try and say her name again, even though there's that video where she says how to spell the name. I think Vada Sethi, I'm sorry, I need to find that video again, who played Belinda Chandra. She did good, but again, it's a situation of, I say again, even though I've not said it in this particular review, but it's a case of the companion character not having that much to do, and I do feel as though, without going back to the story thing, the whole aspect of she learns one half the story of the Hellions and the Doctor learns the other half would have been a great thing. You know, the two of them see two very different sides of the conversation, then they come into the middle and you have more of a clash of to how to, if you want to have a phrase, deal with the problem at hand. I think that's an element that was missing from it, but at the same time, I don't think that an episode like this needed it. I know what the subtext of this episode is. We don't need to go through all of that, but I think that having two characters argue about all of that wouldn't have served that subtext very well. With that said, however, let's get into the overview and just say that I really did enjoy this episode. It was a rollicking good adventure from start to finish. It's a Doctor Who episode that felt like a genuine adventure, and I have to give full thumbs up and gratsies to. I really did enjoy this one. This was written by Juno Dawson. I don't know if they've written anything more for Doctor Who, but if they have, I want to go back and rewatch. If not, God, I hope they write more for it, and it can be just this. Again, this is a sci-fi adventure episode of Doctor Who, where the sci-fi element of it just works, because it works on a mechanical level, and when you get the mechanics right, with anything, whether it's sci-fi, whether it's horror, whatever it is, it will carry you. It will carry whatever you're doing, and by God, it really does carry this episode. That's all, not to say the episode itself wasn't well written, well performed, but my God, do you have a science fiction episode of Doctor Who which actually feels as though an episode is science fiction and not something else? My God, I really do like that. Well, that's said and done, however, let's get into Comment Corner! It's time for Comment Corner. Only one comment this week, and it's rather self-explanatory. We got Big X1 who says, "This episode was fun. They can't be all as good as last week. Thank you for your comment." And yeah, I agree. This is a great episode of Doctor... Well, last week's episode was a good episode of Doctor Who. Yes, in the grander schemes of this particular season, I don't think it's the best one, but you know what? Thus far this season, I don't think there's been necessarily a bad episode. Apart from the first one, which wasn't necessarily bad, but I think that final act really did screw it over. But the rest of it is good. Even the Lux one, which seems to be everyone's favourite episode of the Russell T Davies Mark II era, which whilst it didn't land for me, has been well appreciated. I think that the series itself is good. It's in a solid position as far as the quality of each episode is given. I'll be interested to see how people think about this particular one, though, but hey-ho, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Next week will be probably the start of the closing two-parter, the grand final rundown of this particular season of Doctor Who. We'll see where all that goes between then and now. Let me know what you thought about this particular episode of Doctor Who, and you read out in a future video. Thank you all for listening, thank you all for watching, and see you next time. Goodbye!
Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell, and do all the YouTubey stuff that YouTube wants you to do. Go on, it'll do me a power of good. Until next time, my friends, goodbye!